grand arena of the A-class tournament echoed with the deafening cheers of 10,000 spectators. Fawn stood at the center of the stage, his silver hair billowing in the wind of the high altitudes. Opposite him, his legendary spirit beast let out a roar that shook the very foundations of the floating island. Without warning, the bond between master and pet twisted into a searing, agonizing black tether. The dragon lunged forward, its jaws unhinging to reveal a void of swirling chaotic energy. Fawn realized too late that the tea he drank before the match had been laced with soul-corrupting poison. His physical form shattered into 1,000 shards of light as the beast consumed his cultivation base. As his consciousness faded, he saw the face of his rival smiling from the VIP balcony. Darkness swallowed everything until a sharp, stinging pain pulled him back from the void. He tried to move his fingers, but they felt heavy and uncoordinated. Gasping for air, he sat up and looked down at hands that were much smaller and rougher than his own. This was not the body of a master, but that of a malnourished boy in tattered rags. Memories that didn't belong to him began to flood his mind like a breaking dam. He was now Lu, a low-level delinquent who had been framed for stealing a precious spirit stone. Looking around the cell, he noticed a cracked ceramic bowl filled with stagnant water. Inside the bowl, a small pathetic gray catfish floated upside down, barely clinging to life. This was the only thing the original Lu had left, a useless pet given to him as a cruel joke. Fawn's master-level senses tingled as he felt a hidden ancient resonance within the dying creature. This was no mere catfish, but a dormant star-devouring seed, a beast of legend. "If I am to survive this night, I must forge a new contract," Fawn whispered in Lu's voice. He dropped the blood onto the fish's head and the water erupted into a pillar of sapphire light. Outside the cell, the heavy footsteps of a guard approached, drawn by the sudden glow. The guard kicked the door, his face appearing through the small iron grate with a look of malice. "What are you doing in there, trash? Are you trying to perform a ritual with a dead fish?" Lu didn't answer, his focus entirely on the spiritual channel he was opening with the catfish. The catfish's body began to expand and ripple, its fins turning into sharp, translucent blades. The guard fumbled for his keys, realizing the trash was actually manifesting spiritual power. "Bite them, little one," Lu commanded, his voice carrying the weight of a general. The catfish shot through the air like a blue bullet, passing right through the iron bars. A scream erupted from the hallway as the guard fell backward, clutching his throat. Lu stood up, his weak legs trembling but his spirit firm and unyielding. He reached through the bars and grabbed the keys from the unconscious guard's belt. The lock clicked open, and the heavy door creaked on its rusted hinges. The catfish returned to his side, now floating in a small bubble of its own spiritual energy. "Step 1 is complete, but the Rockshaw sect will not let me leave this city alive," Lu muttered. He looked at his reflection in a puddle, and saw the face of a failure, but he knew the soul within was a king. Alarms began to ring throughout the prison complex, a series of deep bronze gongs. He needed to reach the Ling Pavilion before the dawn, or his disciples would be sold into slavery. The memory of his betrayal fueled his every step, turning his fear into a cold, hard diamond of resolve. At the end of the hall, a heavy iron gate blocked his path, guarded by 3 elite disciples of the Sect. Lu didn't slow down, instead letting the catfish's energy flow into his own limbs for the first time. With a roar, he threw a punch that carried the phantom weight of a crashing whale. The iron gate crumpled like paper, and the guards were thrown back like dolls into the courtyard. As the dust settled, Lu stood at the edge of the prison wall, looking out at the sprawling city of Lan. But sitting on the highest roof of the pavilion was a figure he recognized all too well, a shadow from his past life. Lu stared upward at the shadowy figure perched atop the rotting shingles of the main hall. The figure leaped down, landing with a heavy thud that cracked the stone tiles beneath their feet. It was Elder Han, his former right hand, now looking aged and broken by the weight of the sect's decline. Lu didn't reveal his true identity yet, instead opting to walk past the old man with a chillingly familiar stride. The courtyard was filled with young disciples who sat slumped against pillars, their weapons rusted and their spirits shattered. A group of thugs from the rival Raksha sect was currently kicking over the pavilion's sacred incense burner. Lu reached into his pocket and felt the cool wet scales of the spirit catfish resting in a spatial pocket. He stepped forward, his footsteps echoing like thunder in the silent, shamed courtyard. The Raksha leader turned around, sneering at the delinquent who dared to interrupt their fun. Without a word, Lu lunged forward, his movement a blur of calculated aggression. He struck the leader's chest with a palm strike infused with the catfish's raw tidal energy. The thug was sent flying backward, smashing through the wooden gates he had just entered. The remaining thugs fled in terror, leaving a stunned silence behind them. Lu turned to the cowering disciples and told them to stand up if they still had any pride left. One young girl, her eyes wet with tears, was the first to rise from the dirt. Lu began a rigorous training session, teaching them the ancient breathing of the deep technique he had mastered as Fawn. The spirit catfish emerged from his pocket, floating in the air and radiating a calming azure glow over the group. Hours passed as the disciples pushed their bodies to the absolute limit under Lu's watchful eye. Elder Han watched from the shadows, a spark of hope finally returning to his weathered face. A messenger hawk suddenly descended, carrying the scroll for the D-class island assessment. Lu unrolled the parchment, revealing a map of the treacherous sinking turtle island. The island was a massive living creature that would submerge once the competition ended. Lu gathered his small team of 5 disciples and marched toward the harbor. The harbor was crowded with hundreds of cultivators from various low-ranking sects, all vying for a spot in the upper ranks. Laughter erupted from the Raksha sect ship as they spotted the Ling Pavilion's humble boat. Lu ignored the taunts, his focus entirely on the spirit energy radiating from the horizon. The catfish pulsed within its spatial container, sensing the ancient aquatic power of the turtle island. As they reached the island, the massive turtle's head rose from the water, creating a tidal wave. Lu commanded his disciples to anchor their spiritual energy to the boat's hull to survive the wave. They landed on the muddy shores of the island, which were already crawling with poisonous spirit beasts. Lu drew a simple wooden sword, yet it hummed with the power of a divine artifact. He cut through the first wave of beasts with a single elegant sweep of his blade. The disciples followed his lead, their fear replaced by a desperate need to prove themselves. Deep in the jungle, they found a hidden shrine dedicated to an ancient whale deity. Lu knelt before the shrine, feeling a resonance between the altar and his catfish. Suddenly, the catfish began to grow, its scales turning into dark celestial armor. The weak pet had evolved into its second stage, a sleek, predatory spirit whale catfish hybrid. A sudden explosion from the center of the island sent a pillar of red light into the sky. The wise sect leader had activated a forbidden array to sink the island ahead of schedule. The ground beneath Lu's feet began to shake violently as the giant turtle roared in pain. Water started rushing in from the cracks, flooding the lowlands instantly. But the most terrifying sight was the shadow of a colossal monster emerging from the red light, a beast Lu recognized as his own killer. The massive beast lunged forward as the red light stained the entire sky a deep crimson. Lu signaled his disciples to retreat toward the higher ground of the sinking turtle island. The Raksha sect leader laughed mockingly while hovering above the chaotic battlefield. Lu tightened his grip on his spiritual staff as his small catfish began to glow with a blinding blue light. The ground beneath them groaned and shifted as the giant turtle island began its final descent into the ocean. Dozens of Yai sect assassins materialized from the shadows to surround the exhausted Lingsha disciples. With a sudden burst of speed, Lu intercepted a lethal strike aimed at his youngest disciple. He whispered a secret mantra from his past life that only an A-class master would know. The catfish pet suddenly expanded in size, its scales transforming into shimmering black armor. Lu commanded the evolving beast to unleash a tidal wave of spiritual energy against the invaders. The Raksha leader was thrown back by the sheer pressure of the ancient aura. "You may have the soul of a master, but that body is still weak," the wise sect leader hissed. Lu simply smiled as his veins began to pulse with the golden blood of his previous incarnation. The disciples gathered in a circle, channeling their remaining mana into Lu's back. A colossal pillar of light erupted from the center of the island, piercing through the storm clouds. The small catfish had finally completed its evolution into the legendary star-devouring whale. The traitorous sects realized too late that they were no longer the hunters. Lu stepped onto the head of the great whale and looked down at his enemies with cold eyes. He remembered every moment of the betrayal that had cost him his life and his pavilion. The star-devouring whale opened its mouth, creating a gravitational vortex that pulled in the enemy's spirits. The wise sect leader tried to sacrifice his own men to create a shield, but the vortex was too strong. Lu raised his hand, and the sound of 1,000 bells echoed across the water. The souls of the innocent disciples who had perished were finally set free from the red light's curse. With one final roar, the whale descended, crushing the Rockshaw sect's main fortress on the island. Lu confronted the wise sect leader on the last piece of dry land left. "You think you have won, but the High Council will never let you live," the villain spat. "Then let them come, for I am the master of the Ling Pavilion," Lu replied. A single strike of his staff sent the villain spiraling into the abyss below. The storm began to dissipate as the island finally settled beneath the waves. Lu used the whale's back as a raft to save his surviving disciples from the freezing water. They looked at their master with a new sense of awe and unwavering loyalty. Lu realized that his journey had only just begun in this new world. The banner of the Ling Pavilion was raised once more, fluttering in the sea breeze. "We will rebuild our home, and no one will ever threaten us again," Lu declared. Far away, the members of the High Council watched the events through a crystal ball with concern. They knew that the legendary Fawn had returned, though he wore a different face. Back on the whale, the disciples shared a moment of laughter despite their injuries. The star-devouring whale let out a deep, melodic song that resonated through the deep sea. Lu sat down at the front, finally feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in decades. Together, they sailed toward the horizon to start the legend of the immortal whale.